If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of Final Fantasy XIV. We cover the stories both big and small, the epic and the cute, the silly and the tragic. I hope you all enjoy the ride, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. Soroban, one of the Kojin, also known as the Ninja Turtles, is on a quest that he needs your help for. For once, that's not an excuse for someone to get the Warrior of Light to do some mundane job that anyone could do. Soroban received an anonymous letter asking for the help of the warrior who took down Susanoo. The Ruby Sea is in danger, but before the mysterious contact will tell you what the danger is, he or she wants to test you to see if your victory over Susanoo was a fluke. To test your power, they want you to go to Hell's Lid and deal with the Oni that live in the deepest parts of that place. If you complete the task, the writer of the letter will tell you everything. You can't just walk into Hell's Lid, however, but the client sent a magic and very valuable dagger with instructions on how to get into the secret passages. The fact that the client so casually sent such a valuable artifact without even knowing whether or not you would agree to come shows that they're very, very rich. If you agree to go, which we all know that you will, Soroban will open the path for you, but since there is a chance to make some money on this little venture, he decides to go and grab Tataru first. Money will make Tataru go anywhere, especially since Alphino keeps spending it on stuff. No scheme is too dangerous for her. Hell's Lid is supposedly a place where the hero Tenzin had defeated a lot of Oni. The Oni were evil creatures that made the lives of the people of the Ruby Sea very difficult. A lot of the creatures lived on the island until Tenzin and the four lords drove them away. The people made him filthy rich after that, and he used his money to journey into the mountains, to live away from people until the end of his life. All of that is just a story as far as Soroban knows, so he has no idea what's waiting for you in Hell's Lid. Since he can't tell you exactly how dangerous it is, Tataru makes the wise decision to hide behind a rock while you do what you do best. Soroban makes it known that he won't be coming with you either, so you head into the place alone. I want people to understand that lava is hot. Well over 1,000 degrees, so while you see people in movies and video games running around near the glowy liquid fire, in real life you'd burn to death being even remotely this close. However, the heat doesn't seem to bother the Warrior of Light all that much as he fights his way past fire elementals and actual flame demons. As he heads deeper into Hell's Lid, the landscape changes and an animal transforms into a giant flying snake and tries to kill you before you reach an underground temple. There you get attacked by a really old, very large, magic-wielding turtle. Old or not, the turtle was no pushover, but when you beat him, he turns into a much smaller sea turtle. Now that the dangers seem to be dealt with, Tataru and Soroban show up and flip the tiny turtle right side up. A small group of other animals show up, and Genbu, the now tiny sea turtle, praises your performance. I guess Soroban has never looked in a mirror because he freaks out at the sight of a talking turtle, which has Tataru and the Warrior of Light giving him a very, very confused side-eye. Genbu ignores Soroban's stupid outburst and apologizes for inviting you to the temple then attacking you, but it is a tradition in the Far East to test people's strength. Now imagine how interesting the world would be if every time you visited a friend's house, you had to slap on some boxing gloves and go a round or two before you even said hi. It would definitely make life more interesting, and trips to Walmart might actually be fun. With the testing out of the way, Genbu introduces himself as the guardian of the temple and the leader of this little group, and he's one of the four lords from the legend. And he's not the only one of the animals who can talk, which is normal to Genbu since all of them are over 1,000 years old. Any animal that manages to live for 1,000 years becomes a god of sorts called an auspice, and the Reason Temple is a place where they can gather. Anything that's lived for so long has got to know some interesting things, and Genbu wants you to talk to them before he tells you why he wanted you to come there. The auspices are talkative. They let you know that there are more of them scattered all over the place, and some of them think they are powerful enough to kill you if you get on their nerves. After living for 100 years, the animals will get the ability to think. If they live for 1,000, they will be able to talk, use magic and everything. And as more time passes, the stronger they'll get. Now that you've met everyone, Genbu dives into why you're there. Each auspice has unique abilities. His ability is clairvoyance. That gift gave him a vision of all of Hingashi on fire, and the future he saw isn't that far away, and if it's going to be stopped, he'll need the help of a strong warrior. That's where you come in, but for you to be able to help, you need to understand the way auspices work. The auspice's soul has two states, the aramatama, which is their animalistic rage, and the nijimatama, which is a state of calm. Those two states have to remain in balance for the auspice to be who it is. But since they live for so long, it's possible for traumatic events to disrupt that balance and cause their souls to split. If an auspice is taken over by the aramatama, they become feral, which is extremely dangerous because they don't lose any of their power in their process. That power is enough to cause major damage wherever they are. Floods, wildfires, erupting volcanoes, and all around death and destruction. That doesn't mean the auspices are bad. Some of the ones who wreaked a lot of havoc in the past actually find pleasure in helping people, which was noted in the story about Tenzin and the Four Lords that Genbu confirms is actually true, to a certain extent. It wasn't an Oni that they fought, but another auspice. The one they fought was Koryu. He had been consumed by the aramatama, and had used his power to cause the flames inside of the island to go haywire. It was going to erupt and destroy the nearby countryside if Tenzin and the Four Lords hadn't fought and sealed Koryu away, in the very temple that you're standing in. Unfortunately, the binding wards are weakening, and if Koryu breaks free, he will finish what he started, which would destroy the island and quite possibly all of Hingashi. Naturally, Tadaru assumes Genbu wants you to fight Koryu when he wakes up, but as strong as the Warrior of Light is, alone the auspice would kill him. You'll need the help of the Four Lords. Sadly, Genbu isn't as young or as powerful as he used to be, and to make a bad situation worse, his three comrades have nearly fallen to the aramatama. They're holding it off, but while they're struggling against their inner darkness, they can't use their powers to strengthen Koryu's prison. Now that you understand how bad things are, Genbu lets you know what he needs you for. He wants the Warrior of Light and some of his adventurer allies to fight the other three lords to help them regain control of their primal nature. Fighting gods is just another Tuesday for the Warrior of Light, so of course he's up for it. Genbu had figured that he would be, so he had already told Byakko that you were there, so the auspice is on his way. The White Tiger is a lot bigger than the other auspices that you've seen, and he's more powerful, but Genbu lets him know that you beat Susanoo, so when the two of you fight, he doesn't have to hold back. Byakko didn't need the turtle to tell him that you were special. He senses the same light from you that he felt from Tenzin, meaning the hero of the legends was a Warrior of Light as well. Since everyone is ready, Genbu tells Byakko to let the aramatama take control, which is not what Tadaru expected since it means the tiger will go on a murderous rampage. But the only way for him to get control is to unleash it and have someone force him to calm down. As long as the auspice hasn't been in that state for so long that he forgets himself entirely, he can regain control. Koryu had been fully taken by his other side, so there was no coming back for him. This method of taming the auspice does have one major drawback. If you fail to subdue him, Byakko won't even be able to regain the small amount of control he has now. He'll become another savage auspice just like Koryu, and that will be the end, so no pressure. Not wanting to destroy the temple during your fight, and because Byakko wants to see the land where he was born just in case this is his last day as himself, the two of you leave the temple to prepare for battle, while Genbu gives Soroban a task, and he has one for Tadaru, who he calls an excitable little urchin as well. With all of the preparations made, the Warrior of Light gets ready to square off with Byakko. The auspice lets his aramatama take over, and his new form looks incredible. Not only does it look cool, but he literally makes a tornado that tosses you and your fellow adventurers so high into the sky that you fall for what feels like forever before you finally hit the ground. We're just gonna ignore the fact that falling from that height and slamming into the ground like that would kill absolutely anyone, but the Warrior of Light just shrugs it off and gets right back into the fight. Since you managed to survive falling for a few miles, it's not surprising to anyone when you overpower Byakko. Now that he's back in control, the White Tiger praises your strength and comments on how you're very much like Tenzin. He had met the man long before the kingdom of Doma had ever been created. Back then, because of his fur, Byakko had been marked as a harbinger of doom, so no one, neither human nor animal, wanted to be around him. Instead of sticking around where he wasn't wanted, Byakko had went alone into the mountains to wait for death. But instead of dying, he grew stronger and more unique as time passed, and even fewer creatures would dare to enter his domain. It was a lonely existence until one day he woke and there was a man just standing there. Byakko roared at him and threatened to kill him, but instead of leaving, the man introduced himself as Tenzin. He had always had the ability to talk to animals, which made his people label him a harbinger of doom and kick him out. Seems like people throw that label onto everything they don't understand. But with both of them being outcasts, Byakko and Tenzin became friends. They went on journeys together and ran into others like themselves that caused their group of friends to grow, which sounds a lot like the Scions of the Seven Dawn. Byakko could talk to you about his adventures all day long, but there are other things to do, so you head back to the Ryusen Temple. Genbu is just as appreciative as you would have expected him to be since you helped his friend, but that doesn't explain what Tataru and Soroban are doing. The Kojin have some very powerful incantations, like the one that permanently gave the Warrior of Light Alice and Lise the ability to breathe underwater. So Genbu has made Soroban do some training so he can help strengthen the wards on Koryu's prison. So far the Ninja Turtle is showing some real potential, and Tataru is very good at keeping the Kojin on task. I still think the tiny secretary is going to end up being a boss one day in this game. Just imagine Tataru turning into a primal that instead of taking your health, steals all of your gil. That actually sounds like something that would make for a cool gold saucer event. Of course they use your return as a good time to take a break from their training, so Tataru can ask about Tenzin. She wants to know more about who he was since Genbu already said that most of the stories about the man were totally wrong. For starters, like you, Tenzin had the echo. Because of the strange abilities he had, the people didn't really trust him, but that never stopped him from helping people, which is how he ended up dead. When Tenzin and the Four Lords had fought Koryu, the auspices had barely come into their powers, so they couldn't help nearly as much as they wanted to in the fight. So Tenzin was forced to use the last of his strength to seal Koryu away, before giving Genbu and the others a crystal that Byakko thinks may have been responsible for their powers growing the way that they did. The Four Lords built the Ryusen Temple as a means of strengthening Koryu's prison and protecting the Ruby Sea like Tenzin would have wanted. They plan on continuing to protect the Ruby Sea for their friend, but they need you to help tame the aramatama of the other lords. Once you've gotten some rest, of course. Tataru has some things she needs to check on in Kugane anyway, so she heads off. Soroban tries to sneak away, but Genbu is not letting him leave until his training is complete. So the Kojin wants you to stop by Tamamizu just to let everyone know why he won't be back for a while. Bunshin is happy to hear that Soroban is getting the opportunity to study with Genbu, and since the old auspice sent a letter giving permission to come and go to the temple whenever, Bunshin thinks that he might swing by to check on Soroban when he has time. After the Warrior of Light gets a little bit of sleep, he gets a call from Tataru saying she's going to the temple to give Soroban a snack, and she thinks you should come too. So of course you go, because no one should ignore a request from Tataru. When the two of you arrive, Soroban is still being put through Genbu's training, but he hasn't progressed as much as Genbu had hoped, so he thinks more drastic measures are needed. While Soroban has potential, he's still not a god, which means he may not be ready when the time comes to deal with Koryu. Not to mention the fact that both Seiryu and Suzaku will need their aramatama tamed just like Byakko. So Genbu has a plan for jump-starting Soroban's powers. There's a box called the Tamate Bako that contains the power of time. Once Soroban opens the box, the magic in it will age him 1,000 years and let him become an auspice until the magic wears off. There were similar boxes in the Shisui of the Violet Tides, but they only changed your appearance. The Tamate Bako actually ages you since the box was made by an auspice. This particular auspice had lived long enough to see some of his friends get consumed by the aramatama, forcing him to kill them. He knew that he would eventually share the same fate, so he created the Tamate Bako and used it to age himself into oblivion. That way he could die with his own mind. Once the others learned that the box could kill an auspice, they locked it away in the Swallow's compass until they needed it. But the place has been left untended by anyone other than its guardians, so only a strong warrior has a chance of making it through and retrieving the box. That of course means you. And while you're gone, Genbu plans on pushing Soroban even harder. The auspice you fought in Hell's Lid shows you to the compass and takes the wards down so you'll be able to enter the place. But he does warn you not to open the box once you get it. Before you charge in, he does tell you that the person guarding the box is pretty strong, but since you beat Byakko, you should be okay. The place is protected by everything from magical wards to giant living statues that seem to be a defense that every single fortress in Doma enjoyed using. Elementals of all kinds try to kill you, but none of that compares to the final guardian of the magic box.
A monkey auspice flies in on Goku's magic cloud and proceeds to try to beat you to death with the magical shape-changing staff. Kitan Dashang is a formidable fighter just like the other auspices, but after you overcome his strongest techniques, he lets you take the box. With it in tow, you head back to Genbu to see if the magic will be enough to make Soroban into an auspice. It does, but it doesn't work out the way that you think. And after Tataru gets a face full of the magic dust and turns into an old prune for all of 30 seconds, you have to face off against a very out of control auspice Soroban, who seems very eager to kill you all.
Since Soroban is out of control and there's no telling how long he'll stay that way, Genbu decides to join in on the fighting to help calm him down. For some reason, Tataru tries to help out too, and as soon as the fighting starts, her carbuncle runs away, so it's up to the Warrior of Light and Genbu to calm the out of control turtle down. The fact that the power that was hidden in Soroban was so great is nothing short of impressive, and after he finally turns back to normal, he doesn't even remember what he'd done, or why you all look so tired. Even though things didn't turn out exactly how he had expected, Genbu does feel like this little training session was a success, since it showed that even though Soroban is weaker than Byakko and even Genbu, given time and training, he could easily become their equals. They all started off pretty weak in the beginning anyway. Genbu had barely even become an auspice when he first met Tenzin. He had seen a vision of a terrible calamity where a lot of people would die, but since he was a tiny turtle, there wasn't all that much he could do to stop it. Genbu had seen the future multiple times, and had never had the power to do anything about it. But after living for over 500 years, he had saw a vision of a landslide that was going to destroy a village that wasn't far away. He decided that it was time for him to do something, so Genbu tried to warn the people. Unfortunately, he didn't speak the language of humans, so he couldn't communicate with them at all. Since there was nothing he could do, he decided to leave the village, knowing that he'd have to watch another bad prediction come true. When he was leaving, Tenzin saw him, and was actually able to understand him. He was traveling with Byakko, and the two of them started fighting in the middle of the village to make the people run off. The village got destroyed not long after that, but the people survived. It was the first time Genbu had managed to save anyone with his visions. After that, he joined Tenzin and Byakko, and they traveled around the world helping people. Thinking back on all of the dangers they had faced together makes Genbu really wish that Tenzin was there. But the Warrior of Light isn't a pushover, so having him there does make things a little better. Break time's over, so Genbu's ready to get back to training Soroban while Tataru heads back to Kugane. The Warrior of Light heads back to the Kojin city to let the Elder know what Soroban is up to. It doesn't take long for Genbu to send a letter telling you that you need to get back to the temple, so the Warrior of Light and Tataru both head back over there to see what's changed in your absence. From what Genbu says, Soroban's gotten a lot stronger since you left, but Genbu has him doing some special training at the moment that he says is better done in private, so you can't see him. That's not why he called you anyway. The wards on Koryu's prison have gotten even weaker, which means the four lords need to finish getting ready for the inevitable battle. So Genbu needs you to tame the feral side of another of his friends. The one he's talking about is Suzaku, the firebird. She shows up at the temple for the first time in a few hundred years, and she's not all that happy that Genbu called her there. She didn't know that Koryu was on the verge of breaking free, but now that she does, she assumes that means that the Warrior of Light is supposed to tame her feral side. Genbu tells her that you're the heir of Tenzin's legacy, and she gets offended by the fact that he compares someone like you to Tenzin. She's extremely fond of their fallen comrade, and since you are bold enough to say that you're his equal, she plans on killing you very painfully when you fail to measure up. Even Tataru notices that Suzaku seems a lot more angry than Byakko had, but Genbu says it's because her aramatama feeds off of her grief over the loss of Tenzin, and that makes her more angry, but it's her story to tell. And she'll likely tell you all of it, if she doesn't burn you to death when you fight. The fact that you're brave enough to risk your life to fight her does get Suzaku to have a little more respect for you, but she still doesn't see you as fit to take up Tenzin's mantle. Byakko understands partially how she feels, but Tenzin's dead, and if the four lords aren't brought back to their full power, Koryu will destroy the Ruby Sea, which will ruin Tenzin's legacy. The man died right before their eyes to prevent that from happening, and if Suzaku spends her time mourning the past while abandoning the present, she'll be dishonoring their friend's sacrifice. Byakko's words do the opposite of making Suzaku see reason. She thinks that the Warrior of Light has started corrupting the others just because he has the same sin as Tenzin. She's very nearly been fully overtaken by her aramatama, so there's not all that much time left before she'll reach the point of no return. So the Warrior of Light heads off to battle what may be the most powerful of the four lords. Suzaku takes on her true form and really tries to kill you. Not like the others hadn't tried hard before, but it's always something about the fire-wielding enemies that really makes it seem like they want you dead. But the Warrior of Light beats her, getting her darker side under control, and after that she's much calmer than she had been. She apologizes for how disrespectful she was, and she thanks you for saving her from a fate far worse than death, as well as for freeing her mind so she could mourn Tenzin in the proper way. She clearly loved the man way more than a friend, and since she does have a human form, we'll just leave their relationship status up to the interpretation of the Twitter folks, who tend to create some somewhat disturbing art. Now that her mind's clear, Suzaku tells the Warrior of Light her story. She was born a very long time ago, and because of how she looked, people mistook her for the legendary bird Phoenix, and since the Phoenix was said to be able to make people immortal, she was hunted constantly. The only person who didn't treat her like a tool was Tenzin. She had joined him, Genbu, Byakko, and Seiryu, and the four lords and the samurai traveled around the realm together. People were afraid of them, but Tenzin still wanted to help people. Eventually, they started to praise them all for their good works. They dealt with any problems that came up, whether they were demons to kill or possessed people to free. There was no job that they wouldn't take, and eventually a king called on them for their help. That was what led them to their fight with the insane auspice Koryu. While their group had taken down quite a few threats, they were still young as auspices go, and they were no match for Koryu. But Tenzin used all of his power to strike out at Koryu and seal him away, but that caused him to take a fatal blow. If Suzaku had actually been the legendary Firebird, she could have saved Tenzin, but at the time she didn't have the powers. She got them later, which was basically a slap in the face. But since she can't use those powers to save Tenzin, she can at least use them to save the people he died to protect. She's made a decision, so the two of you go back to let the others know that this mission was a success. The fact that you aren't dead lets everyone know that things must have turned out okay, and Suzaku's relaxed demeanor makes her much better to be around. Since that part's done, Genbu finally remembers that he needs to check on Soroban since he left him training alone. So he calls him and Soroban comes flying in. Once again he's changed. This time he's turned into a giant tortoise. He probably just said a word wrong in the ritual Genbu had him doing and accidentally gave his body to a turtle god. He doesn't want to stay like that, but Genbu doesn't know how long he'll actually be like that. If he's lucky, he'll turn back by the time you tame Seiryu's dark side. But that will take a while since the Warrior of Light needs some rest. Since Soroban can't leave, he wants you to stop by his home and let the Elder know what's happened to him now. The Warrior of Light agrees and he heads off to relay the message and get a bit of sleep before he goes after the last of the four lords. While the Warrior of Light was away, an auspice came to Bunshin looking for him, and he was a little bit on edge, which means things must be getting pretty bad at the temple, so not wasting any time, the Warrior of Light rushes back over there. Apparently Koryu's wards are really close to breaking down, so the three lords and Soroban are working hard to keep them in place. But they won't be able to hold it for long, which means they need you to get Seiryu's aramatama back under control so he can join in with the resealing process. From what Genbu says, Seiryu is the strongest member of their group, so fighting him won't be easy, and it seems like you won't have to go looking for him because he shows up at the temple. He knows that the two of you need to fight, but it'll probably be a bad idea to do it right there, so the two of you head off to get things underway. Genbu decides to come with you, and he leaves Tataru in charge while he's away. When you all make it outside, Seiryu can sense the similarities between you and Tenzin, and since Tenzin had beat Seiryu in a one-on-one fight, he has a lot of respect for the man. He had wanted to get stronger than him, and he had been training since the day they met, but he never got his rematch since Koryu killed him. Once he had gained real power, there wasn't anyone left to test it against. Then he thought about Koryu. He could fight against him and kill him, and that would let him get both a good fight and revenge for his fallen friend. And he figured out exactly what he needed to do to get the power to win. If he wanted to beat a corrupted auspice, he'd have to become a corrupted auspice. So unlike the others, he stopped resisting his dark side. He knows that means he'll lose himself entirely, but he believes that's the only way to get the power he needs to beat Koryu. And that also means fighting him will be even harder for you. Since Seiryu willingly embraced his darker half, that will make him a lot stronger than the others. It really does make him stronger, but it's still not enough to overpower the Warrior of Light. With the battle over and Seiryu having tasted his second defeat at the hands of a mortal, he lets you know his story. He had been lucky. He was born on an island where the people worship snakes and they thought he was a kami. When people call you a god for long enough, you'll start to believe it, which Seiryu did, but things actually got put into perspective when he manifested his powers and the people started treating him differently. When problems popped up, droughts, floods and such, they started to think that it was his doing. They thought they'd made the god upset, So they changed their offerings from normal things like money and food to people, thinking that sacrificing young pure women to the snake god would solve their problems. No matter how you season people meat, it's probably disgusting, so instead of eating the women, Seiryu just took them away from the island. And yes, I said people meat is probably nasty, so none of you will assume that I've tasted it before. That's how rumors get started, and I don't really need all that drama in my life. Since things started to get better after their sacrifices, the people kept the practice going, and eventually the kami that they had all loved for generations got labeled as a demon, and the people who had once worshipped him started convincing mercenaries to come and kill the snake. Let's just say that ended badly for all of the ones that showed up. Seiryu didn't like killing the people, but he did like living, so they had to go. But all of that changed when Tenzin and the 3 auspices that he had made friends with showed up. He fought Tenzin one-on-one and lost. He had expected the man to kill him afterwards, but instead he offered him a place in his crew. Seiryu didn't want charity, but Tenzin told him that he could pay for their company by using his power to help people. That way he could become a god that was actually worthy of being worshipped. After telling the Warrior of Light his story, Seiryu realized that what he had remembered before the fight when he was letting his dark side take over was completely different from what he knew the story had meant. His more malicious half was making him remember things in a way that made it seem like letting it have control was the right thing to do. Realizing that makes him grateful to you for clearing his mind. That couldn't have come at a better time, because Genbu headed back to the temple while the two of you were fighting, because apparently Koryu is really close to breaking free. The two of you book it back to the temple, and when you get there, Genbu's happy to see his friend acting normal again, but they don't get time to chat because Koryu's wards are about to break. The 4 lords need to get started on sealing the prison, but Genbu wants the Warrior of Light and Tataru to leave just in case they fail, because if Koryu breaks free, everyone in the temple will die first. Of course, after coming this far, neither of them plan on leaving, and since there's no time to argue about it, the 4 lords get started. At first it looks like they succeed in binding the auspice again, but they don't and Koryu breaks free. His very presence changes the entire landscape and he wastes no time attacking the group. Genbu blocks the attack, but he can't hold it off for long. When it breaks through his shield, it kills the old turtle. With one of their number dead, the lords know that they can't win, but they think they can hold Koryu off until the rest of you escape. We all know that the Warrior of Light never runs away, even when he should, so he jumps in to help them out. As soon as Koryu sees him, he thinks that he's Tenzin. He remembers killing you and he gets ready to do it again, but the real Tenzin appears and shields you all. Everyone's surprised to see him, but no one's gonna complain about the extra help, so him and the Warrior of Light combine their powers to help hold Koryu back. But even with the added power, without Genbu they still won't be able to seal the auspice away. Seeing as how there's no other way, Soroban steps up and performs the ritual that Genbu had taught him. It was the one that he had done wrong when he'd given his body to a turtle god, but this time he knows how to do it right, and he's using it to summon Genbu's soul back. But there's a catch. Genbu's soul will merge with Soroban's, and Soroban will lose his body, meaning he's about to give his life to resurrect Genbu. He's well aware of what's going to happen, and in true hero fashion he does it anyway. Genbu is restored, and with the full power of the 4 lords, the Warrior of Light and Tenzin, they manage to seal Koryu away again. The seals will weaken again over time, but it'll be thousands of years before that's a problem for anyone. It's a good day overall, but the joy everyone feels is still overshadowed by the fact that they lost Soroban in the process. Genbu doesn't understand why they're all so sad because according to him, Soroban's not dead, and to prove it he turns back into the younger turtle. Under normal circumstances, Soroban would have died, because the strength of the soul determines who would control the body, and it's always the stronger soul that wins. But with all of his training, Soroban has actually become stronger than Genbu, which means it'll be Genbu that fades away. But before he does, he'll be sure to teach Soroban everything that he can about becoming his replacement, if the other lords agree. After seeing how willingly the turtle had risked his life to save them all, he more than earned his spot as the newest member of the 4 lords. There was one last thing that they were all curious about. They couldn't understand how the real Tenzin had appeared. Their best guess is that he may have placed a part of his own soul in the ward that he had made around Koryu, and when it had broken, it not only released the auspice, but that piece of Tenzin's soul too. If that's the truth, then Genbu may be able to teach Soroban how to do that before he fades away. Since he'll be a part of him for the next 500 years, I'm pretty sure he has enough time to get it done. This concludes the story of the 4 lords. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, ding that notification bell, and if you really want to show your support, you can donate to the channel through the link in the description. Until next time, guys. Later.